Welcome everybody to another deep dive. Today we're diving into a topic that's got a bit of everything, really.
Yeah.
History, mystery, maybe even a splash of genetics. Ever heard of the Khazars?
Oh, a fascinating case.
Right. They built this powerful kingdom right in the heart of what we now call Russia and Ukraine, way back, I think, 6th to 10th centuries. You know, when I first bumped into the Khazars, what really grabbed me was their, shall we say, unique approach to religion. See, these were Turkic people. We're talking vast steppes, horses, nomadic traditions, the whole bit. Not exactly who you'd picture converting to, well,
Yeah.
Judaism and en masse at that.
A rarity indeed, and you're right, it's that mass conversion that makes them so fascinating, especially when we're trying to understand, like, the bigger picture of Jewish history.
Okay, so before we get too far down the road, let's make sure we're all on the same page. We're going to be spending a lot of time talking about Ashkenazi Jews today. That's the group most associated with this whole Khazar theory. And just so everyone knows, Ashkenazi Jews, they're a significant part of the global Jewish community, deep roots in Europe, and later, of course, North America.
And what we have to remember about the Khazars is their location. They were right at this crossroads between Asia and Europe, a real hub of trade. Imagine merchants from everywhere, all these different cultures, exchanging goods, ideas, you name it, even beliefs.
So a real cultural melting pot then.
Precisely, a melting pot. But also, and this is the frustrating part, a bit of a black box, historically speaking. Reliable records about them, pretty scarce, which, as you can imagine, leaves a lot of room for, shall we say, speculation.
It's like, trying to put together one of those 1,000-piece puzzles, but half the pieces are missing. You've got these, like, intriguing little hints and whispers of a connection, but not enough to really, see the whole picture. And that's where this whole idea, the Khazar theory, comes in, right? This idea that a big chunk of, well, the Jewish population today might actually be descended from these, like, mysterious converts. Wild.
Oh, it's a compelling story, no question.
Yeah.
But like always, we got to go where the evidence leads, or in this case, doesn't lead. The traditional narrative, the one that's been, backed up by tons of research, traces Ashkenazi Jewish origins back to the Levant.
Okay, the Levant. Now, for those of us who maybe need a little geography refresher.
Sure. We're talking Eastern Mediterranean, think modern-day Israel, Lebanon, Syria, that whole area. An incredibly old region, obviously, with a very layered history. I mean, we're talking about thousands of years of Jewish history rooted in that part of the world. A far cry from the steppes of Central Asia, right?
Yeah. Bit of a hike, to say the least. So how does the historical record line up with this whole Khazar business then?
Well, that's where things get, let's say, a little messy for the theory. History's pretty clear that Jewish communities were already well established in Europe way before the Khazars even showed up on the scene in a big way. Imagine someone trying to tell you that your hometown, the place your family's been for generations, was actually founded by, I don't know, time travelers or something. Fun to think about, maybe, but you'd probably want some pretty strong evidence before you went rewriting the history books, right?
Absolutely. So it's not just the distance, but the timing's just all off. What else do we have that pokes holes in this theory? Lay it on us.
All right. There are three biggies that really cast doubt on this whole Khazar idea. First up, genetics. Genetics has totally changed how we look at, well, human history, ancestry, all of it. Scientists can now trace back ancestral lines through DNA. It's really amazing the level of accuracy they can get. And what does the DNA say about the Ashkenazi Jewish population? It overwhelmingly links them to the Middle East, not to where the Khazars were hanging out.
So it's like digging through your family history, right?
Yeah.
You think you might uncover some, I don't know, Viking ancestor or something, but then boom, turns out they were potato farmers in Ireland all along, no secret Vikings.
Exactly. And this genetic evidence, it gets back up from good old-fashioned historical records. We talked about this a bit earlier, but it's important. We've got clear documentation of Jewish communities thriving in Europe long before the Khazar kingdom really got going. Think archaeological finds, synagogues, Jewish artifacts, all that, in places like Rome, Cologne, places like that. And we're talking way back, Roman Empire times, centuries before the Khazars came along.
It'd be like if, you found Roman ruins in your backyard and your neighbor tried to claim he built them last week. Come on. The timeline just doesn't make sense. All right, so we've got genetics, we've got history, both saying nope to the Khazar theory. What's the third nail in the coffin?
Yes. Number 3, language. Language is fascinating. It's like a fingerprint, It tells you so much about where a culture's been, who they've interacted with, the whole story. Now, Yiddish, the language spoken by many Ashkenazi Jews, Super interesting. It's this unique mix of Hebrew, Germanic languages, even some Slavic influences mixed in. It reflects their journey through Europe, really, the communities they encountered, the languages they picked up along the way.
So Yiddish is like this, linguistic tapestry then, all these different threads from different times and places. But what's cool is what's not there.
Exactly. What's glaringly absent, any real trace of Khazar or Turkic influence in the language. If the Khazar theory was completely true, wouldn't you expect to find at least some linguistic leftovers, some echoes?
You'd be like, well, my family's always spoken Italian at home. Always. But then we find out, oh, by the way, we're descended from, Russian royalty. I mean, wouldn't there be a few stray Russian words in our everyday conversations?
You'd think so.
A sharp observation. And yet, even with all this evidence stacked against it, this Khazar theory, it just won't quit.
So why is that? Why does it stick around when we've got all this evidence saying it's not accurate? Why is it so, I don't know, sticky?
That, my friend, is a great question. And to really understand it, we have to move beyond just the history and look at something, well, a bit more complicated.
So we've got the genetics, the history, even the language, all pointing away from this Khazar theory. You'd think that would be it, right? Case closed. But you're saying it's still, out there. That's kind of a weird thought.
It is unsettling because the fact that this theory hangs on, even though the evidence just isn't there, it tells us something kind of important about how stories, even false ones, can take hold and, spread.
So it's bigger than just an academic debate then. Yeah, unfortunately, that's right. The Khazar theory, it tends to pop up in certain circles, and often those circles, well, they've got some anti-Semitic leanings, let's say.
Because it lets them rewrite history.
Yeah.
Right. In a way that undermines Jewish identity, their connection to their, ancestral homeland.
Exactly. It's a way to say, see, Jewish history isn't legitimate, to cast doubt on those deep roots in the Middle East. And by doing that, well, they're also casting doubt on the connection to Israel. It's an old tactic, really, as old as prejudice itself. Find a weak spot in the story, even if you have to make it up, and then try to blow it wide open.
That's pretty disheartening, honestly. But it also makes it even more important to talk about, don't you think? To really shine a light on how people try to twist history to fit, their own agendas.
I completely agree. And this is where, thinking critically becomes so crucial. We can't just accept an idea because it sounds, kind of cool or different. We've got to be willing to dig a little deeper, to really look at the evidence, to check our sources.
Solid advice in any situation, really, especially these days. But here's what I keep coming back to. Let's just say, for a second, that there was some little tiny bit of Khazar ancestry woven into, the bigger picture of Ashkenazi Jewish heritage. Would it even matter? Because reading through all the material for this deep dive, what really struck me was the incredible resilience of Ashkenazi culture. The traditions, the language, even, like you said, that self-deprecating humor. That's a powerful story of cultural identity, no matter what threads went into making it right.
You've hit on something really important about identity. It's fluid, it's complex, it's shaped by so many influences over time. And you're right, the research we've looked at shows that richness so well. For example, there's a strong tradition of scholarship, of intellectual pursuit in Ashkenazi culture, and this is a tradition that thrived even when they were facing some really, really tough times. And of course, there's the music, the food, that unique blend of Eastern European and Middle Eastern traditions.
It's that tapestry idea, isn't it? Every single thread, every color, it all adds to the beauty and the complexity of the whole thing.
Exactly. This whole Khazar thing, even though it's a historical dead end, I think it does offer us a valuable lesson. It reminds us that history, it's not just dates in a textbook. It's about how we interpret those dates, how we grapple with the past to try and make sense of the present. And when you're talking about something as personal and as nuanced as cultural identity, well, those interpretations, they can be messy, they can be debated, and they're always evolving.
So listeners, as we come to the end of our deep dive into, history, mystery, and the enduring power of culture, we're left with this. What threads, real or imagined, make up your own tapestry? What stories, what histories have shaped who you are? Keep exploring those threads, keep asking those questions, and until next time, happy deep diving.